Welcome to the first book club of 2017. If you are in Mr. Pete's class or anywhere else, I should be doing book clubs on a weekly basis, dependent on time, of course, and where we're at in class or where I'm at, depending on if I find a new book I want to read or if I want to read an old book. I'm going to start with a book that I'm super familiar with, as is any student who's been in my class. I'm going to start with a book called The Lemonade War, simply because I started this book a couple of years ago and then never finished it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it again and work through it with this year's group of kids, and of course anybody else who wants to go ahead and read it. If you're in my class, today's date is January 28th, 2017. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be reading this book. If you're interested in being in the book club, get the book. I have 4 or 5 copies. You can probably find it at the library or anywhere else. If you read the book, if you prove that you have the book, you can take part in the end of the book discussion that I'll do probably during a recess, maybe even do it after school if I can get parents to buy into it. So just because you don't have the book doesn't mean you can't take part. However, of course, it helps to be in a book club to actually own the book. Now, there's lots of ways you can do that. You can either have the book or you can get it on Kindle, on your iPad. You can get it on your phone. You can get it with any app as well. I always prefer the paper version, but you'll see me on occasion using my iPad because I have over the years used my iPad to buy some of my favorite books so that I can always add and notate to it. If you know me, if you know my reading groups that I've always had, whether it be whole group class books or single solitary books, I write a ton in them. I annotate everything. I love to do that. That's part of the fun of reading for me, so that when I go back, I can remember what I was thinking at the time. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start The Lemonade War by Jacqueline Davies. It's one of my favorite books. I've read it for many, many years. My fantastic teammate Cecily Lewis, and I believe it was Carolyn Buchholz, who did this together at first. And of course, I think we've done it with other teammates. And I took this book with me to Herbert Akins Road Elementary, where several other teachers have used it. And I also now read it here at McCain. Now, I haven't read it in a few years. You can see I do have chapter 1 and chapter 2 from 2 years ago. But that being said, I'm going to start it from chapter 1 and join in. Chapter 1, The Lemonade War by Jacqueline Davies. I always like to read the dedication page if there is one, and there is one for this. This one is for Tom, Kim, and Leslie, and she writes the quote, one of my favorite quotes: "All roads lead back," and that is the truth. Rings especially true for those of you that know that I went to school here at McCain Elementary, and I'm currently teaching 2 rooms down from my first room, Mrs. Linden's 2nd grade, back in 1979. The 70s. So those of you really good at math can probably figure out how old I am. Try not to do that. All right. The first chapter is called Slump. And every chapter in the Lemonade War starts off with a fantastic vocabulary word. I'm a baseball fan, so the word slump comes in play a lot. The definition that they give you here: slump. Noun. Always know the part of speech. A drop in the activity of a business or the economy. Gee, I wonder why Mr. Pete used to use this book for economy when he taught reading. Great vocabulary word. Use it. That's your goal. The day you watch this video, use the word slump and actually use it the correct way. All right, here we go. Slump, chapter 1. The literary term of choice during chapter 1 is going to be onomatopoeia, one of my favorite literary terms. Try to notice all of the times it's used. I'm not going to say when it is every single time because it's used a lot, but onomatopoeia is a fantastic way, if you're a writer, to really add pop to your writing, especially when you're a 4th grader, right? 4th graders? Yes, Mr. Pete. All right, here we go. Evan lay on his back in the dark, throwing the baseball up in a straight line and catching it in his bare hands. Thwap, thwap. The ball made a satisfying sound as it slapped in his palm. His legs flopped in a V, his arms stretched up to the ceiling, and the thought that if he missed, he'd probably break his nose made the game just interesting enough to keep going. So whenever I hear stuff like that, whenever I hear an author throw something in like that, I automatically think it's foreshadowing. So he's tossing, and those of you who play baseball or don't, just like to play weird games and lay on your back and throw a ball up, you know what I'm talking about. You're throwing the ball up and down. He's got a baseball, and of course he's thinking, man, if I miss this, it's going to break my nose. So, I mean, probably not going to miss it, but we've all kind of been there before, right? So again, that's something that I take into account. I don't actually have that written in my book. I do have onomatopoeia where we had the thwap, thwap. So first character, Evan, laying in the basement, throwing the ball up. On the floor above, he heard footsteps, his mother's, and then a long, loud, scraping, groaning sound. He stopped throwing the ball to listen. His mother was dragging something heavy across the kitchen floor, probably the broken air conditioner. A week ago, right at the beginning of the heat wave, the air conditioner in his mother's attic office had broken. The man from Sears had installed a brand new one, but left it right in the middle of the kitchen floor. The Treskys had been walking around it all week. 2 characters so far, Evan, his mother, actually 3, really flat character in that Sears repairman, and their last name is Tresky. So we have Evan Tresky and Mom Tresky, since we don't know her name. Scrape! Evan stood up. His mom was strong, but this was a 2-person job. Hopefully she wouldn't ask him why he was hiding in the dark basement, and hopefully Jesse wouldn't be in the kitchen at all. He'd been avoiding her for 2 days now, and it was getting harder by the minute. The house just wasn't that big. More onomatopoeia on that page. For Mr. Pete's class, what was it? You can go back and listen, or you can tell me in the book. Bring it in. Tell me what it is. Also, a new character, Jessie Tresky. I think we don't know. We know it's a she. So Evan has a sister, brother and sister. He's trying to avoid her. I think if you have a sibling, we've all been through that before. Evan had his hand out on the railing when the scraping noise stopped. He heard footsteps fading to silence. She'd given up. Probably the heat, he thought. It was that kind of weather, giving up kind of weather. So kind of keeping in the setting, time and place. It's hot out, probably summer. Okay. He went back to lying on the floor. Thwap, thwap. Then he heard the basement door open. Shh. Evan caught the ball and froze. Evan? Jesse's voice sounded echoey in the darkness. Evan? You down there? Evan held his breath. He lay completely still. The only thing that moved was the pins and needles prickling on his fingers. He heard the door start to close. Long breath out. But then it stopped and opened again. Footsteps on the carpeted stairs. A black outline of Jessie standing on the bottom step with daylight squirting all around her. Great description. Evan didn't move a muscle. So why is Evan? I mean, if they're putting it in the book, it's probably more than just brother and sister stuff. So hopefully you're thinking, why? Why is this? Why is Evan trying to avoid his sister, Jessie? She's obviously looking for him. Who's older, who's younger? All these things hopefully are going through your mind. Evan, is that you? Jessie took one short step into the basement. Is that? She inched her way toward him, then kicked him with her bare foot. Hey, watch it, would ya? Said Evan, swatting her leg. He suddenly felt stupid lying there in the dark. I thought you were a sleeping bag, she said. I couldn't see. What are you doing down here? How come the lights are off? It's too hot with the lights on, he said. He talked in a flat voice, trying to sound like the most boring person in the whole planet. If he kept it up, Jessie might just leave him alone. Mom's back in her office, said Jessie, lying down on the couch. Working. She groaned as she said the word. Evan didn't say anything. He went back to throwing the ball. Straight up, straight down. Maybe silence would get Jessie to leave. He was starting to feel words piling up inside him, crowding his lungs, forcing out all of the air. It was like having a chest full of bats, beating their wings, fighting to get out. It's fantastic. It was like having a chest full of bats, beating their wings, fighting to get out. First of all, you can't have bats in your lungs. So obviously we have a simile here at play. He really had a lot to say. It was like filling him up. Didn't want to say it because who knows why. So he's comparing it to a bunch of bats beating their wings, fighting to get out. Very interesting. We'll talk about this. Comes into play a little bit later. There's another lit term connected to this. I'll get into it in a second. She tried to move the air conditioner, but it's too heavy, said Jesse. Evan tightened up his lips. Go away, he thought. Go away before I say something mean. It's going to be hot all week, Jesse continued. In the 90s, all the way up till Labor Day. Thwap. Thwap. So what do you want to do? Jesse asked. Scream, thought Evan. Jesse never got it when you were giving her the big freeze. She just went right on acting as if everything were great. It made it really hard to tell her to bug off without telling her to bug off. Whenever Evan did that, he felt bad. A good character trait there. He wants to be mean, but he's not. He's avoiding her, so he's kind of still being mean, but he's not as mean as maybe he wants to be. And he knows if he is mean, he's going to feel bad about it. So think about those that know we do the levels, level 6, level 5, level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1. I mean, he's not acting really great. He's kind of in that level 0 mode where he wants to kind of shut her out, but at the same time, he's not giving her what he thinks she deserves. What level is that? So kind of a weird sort of level 5 where he's thinking about her. So the big key here is, why is he so mad? It keeps coming up. So what do you want to do? Jesse asked again, nudging him with her foot. It was a direct question. Evan had to answer it or explain why he wouldn't, and he couldn't get into that. It was too complicated, too hurtful. Huh? So what do you want to do? She asked for the 3rd time. Said Evan. Ah, come on, for real. For real, he said. We could ride our bikes to the 7-Eleven, she said. No money, he said. You just got $10 from Grandma for your birthday. Spent it, said Evan. On what? Stuff, Evan said. Well, Jesse's voice dribbled down to nothing. Evan stopped throwing the ball and looked at her. What? Jessie pulled her legs to her chest. Nothing, she said. Right, said Evan. He knew that Jessie had money. Jessie always had money squirreled away in her lockbox. But that didn't mean she was going to share it. Evan went back to throwing the baseball. He felt a tiny flame of anger shoot up and lick his face. He felt a tiny flame of anger shoot up and lick his face. Funny bit of personification there. He felt angry. And that anger, first of all, simile compared it to a flame, actually a metaphor. And then it wanted to lick him. And we know that anger or a flame can't lick him. A very, very much personification. Thwap. Thwap. We could build a fort in the woods, said Jesse. Too hot. We could play Stratego. Too boring. We could build a track and race marbles. Too stupid. A thin spider of sweat draped itself over his forehead, spreading into his hair. Great description. With every throw, he told himself, it's not her fault. But he could feel his anger growing. He started popping his elbow out to put a little more juice on the ball. It was flying a good 4 feet into the air every time. Straight up, straight down. Pop, thwap. Pop, thwap. The bats in his chest were going nuts. No bats in his chest. A bit of hyperbole there. What is the matter with you? Asked Jesse. You've been so weird the last couple days. Oh, man, here they come. I just don't want to play a dumb game like Stratego, he said. You like Stratego. I only picked that because it's your favorite game. I was being nice, in case you hadn't noticed. Look, there are only 6 days left of summer, and I'm not going to waste them playing a dumb game. Evan felt his heartbeat speed up. Part of him wanted to stuff a sock in his mouth, and part of him wanted to deck his sister. It's a stupid game, and it's for babies, and I don't want to play a stupid baby game. Pop, thwap, pop, thwap. Why are you being so mean? Evan knew he was being mean, and he hated being mean, especially to her, but he couldn't help it. He was so angry and so humiliated and so full of bats. Hyperbole. There was nothing else he could be except alone, and she'd taken even that away from him. You're the genius, he said. You figure it out. Good. That would shut her up for once. Evan watched the ball fly in the air. Is this because of the letter? Jesse asked. Crack! Onomatopoeia. Evan had taken his eyes off the ball for 1 second, just for 1 second, and the ball came crashing down on his nose. There's that foreshadowing. Crud! Oh, crud! He hurled over onto his side, grabbing his nose with both hands. There was a blinding, blooming pain right behind his eyes that was quickly spreading to the outer edges of his skull. Blinding, blooming. 2 B words that start off together. Alliteration. A small amount of alliteration, but because of those popping BLBL, blinding, blooming pain right behind his eyes that was quickly spreading to the outer edges of his skull. Do you want some ice? He heard Jesse ask in a calm voice. What do you think? He shouted. Yeah? She stood up. No, I don't want any stupid ice. The pain was starting to go away, like a humongous wave that crashes with a lot of noise and spray, but then slowly fizzles away into nothing. Simile. Evan rolled to a sitting position and took his hands away from his nose. With his thumb and index finger, he started to pinch the bridge. Was it still in a straight line? Jesse peered at his face in the dim light. You're not bleeding, she said. Yeah? Well, it hurts, he said. A lot. It's not broken, she said. You don't know that, he said. You don't know everything. You know, you think you do, but you don't. It's not even swollen. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Evan held his nose with one hand and hit his sister's knee with the other. And he picked up the baseball and struggled to his feet. Leave me alone. I came down here to get away from you, and you just had to follow. You ruined everything. You ruined my summer, and now you're going to ruin school. I hate you. When he got to the bottom of the steps, he threw the baseball down in disgust. Thud. Okay. So here's a kid who's talking about not wanting to say mean things to his sister. And man, he just told her he hated her. And I really liked the end. He throws the ball down, ends with onomatopoeia, that thud. But was he talking about something else? Like, what else does that thud mean? It's a metaphor. It means something else. So remember, connect it to this. And I'm just going to ask the question. And this is one of those things you can bring in again on a sticky note or an index card. What was the other reason he used the word thud? And why did the author put that in there? A great metaphor for something else that just happened in that paragraph. Okay, so prediction time. We're going to go to chapter 2 here in a few minutes. Well, that depends on when I get it posted. For some of you, it'll be a few minutes. For some of you, it'll be another day. It seems like they're close. You can hear Evan constantly talking about how he doesn't want to let her down. She obviously wants to do something with him, so this must be something that happens a lot. They do play together, play Stratego or some other games. So the question is, why is Evan so mad? And he mentions a few things throughout this first chapter that kind of make you think. You don't know everything. You're so smart, you figure it out. And then he throws this out here. You ruined my summer. Now you're going to ruin school. So what does that mean? We don't know who's older and who's younger, but we do know that, Evan's angry at her for some reason. So it's not school yet. So how could she have ruined school? And then she referenced one important thing, and hopefully you noticed what that was. She mentioned one thing. Are you mad because of? So if you have the book, I want you, again, another sticky note item. What was that one thing that she mentioned that is probably at play here? Bring that in again for bonus money. So onomatopoeia words that are in there that I didn't mention. Tell me your prediction. Bring in the weird thing that she mentioned that it might have to do, or anything else that I mentioned that you could bring in on a sticky note. As long as you do that, I will give you some Pete bucks. Also, the last thing, if you bring in a book, because you're reading this as well, I'll give you 10 Pete bucks for being part of the book club. And then over the course of this book, we will find out the end and what we're going to do for that. All right. Thanks for joining me. The Lemonade War. Read it. It's a great book and a series. When I bought this, it wasn't a series. Now there's 4 or 5 books in it. I've only read 2. So perhaps we will go through the whole series. We shall see. Tune in for Lemonade War Chapter 2 coming soon.